Hi friends, welcome to Creative DIY Purpose. This week I have 5 easy scrapwood projects that you are going to love to create. Last week we posted part 1 in this series, so if you missed it, be sure to check it out. I have a lot to share with you today, so come on, let's get started. Here's a list of materials and tools that I used for each project today. Additional supplies will be posted at the beginning of each project so that you can take a screenshot if you'd like. All but one project used just straight, simple cuts using my jigsaw. So for this first project, I cut out 3 different size boards and then sanded each one and drilled a small hole on the top of each board. So for this next step, I used toothpicks, wood glue, and 3 metal knobs. I wanted to put the knobs on the top of each of the pine boards, but I wanted to make sure it was more secure than just adding the wood glue. I did look up online, and it does say for this type of Gorilla Glue that you can use a metal to wood contact, but I wanted to make sure that it was really stable. So I applied wood glue inside of the hole, added the 2 toothpicks together, and then screwed the knob on top of the toothpicks. And because those knobs are threaded on the inside, it actually worked very well and they're very secure. So I knew I wanted to turn these into pumpkins, but I had no vision at this point. Actually, I had too many visions. I needed to settle on one and make a decision. So I was inspired by a viewer last week that asked what she could use if she doesn't have any of the clay molds. So she inspired me to show this technique. Rolled out the air dry clay, and yes, I am rolling a doily on, but you'll see that it was not stained by the clay because I put on such a thick coat of the cornstarch. So I'm going through with a cookie cutter and trying to find the areas that have the coolest looking texture. Next step is to take a damp brush and go around the corners just to get the seam off of the edges. Now I'm applying each clay piece on to the pumpkin, and here I'm just using a toothpick to go around the edges. I applied a coat of the DIY white wax to the entire piece and then wiped it back, and I did apply some to the metal knob as well. I let that sit on for a little while and then wiped it back. And I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, okay, it still needs something. So I got out the antiquing wax, and my bottle's a mess, and added just that drop right there to about the same amount of water, so probably about half and half. And I took a cloth and lightly dabbed around the edges of the pumpkin with the cloth. And then I wasn't really happy with the way that the stone color clay came out on them. There was just still something missing. I took white acrylic paint and applied that to the clay. And now I'm using the celery from Waverly and just dabbing some of that on. I think that works. Then I tied on some straw and a little ribbon. If you're interested in Canva tutorials and how to make DIY designs, I'd like to invite you over to my second channel, which is linked above here and below in the description. So this piece of scrap wood had a big chunk taken out of it. I sanded it the best that I could on the one side and decided to saw the board in half and make little mini decorative cutting boards. So I measured it out, did a flip pattern, took it outside and cut it with my saw. And when I brought it in, I think it was just because of the shape and the size and it being so chunky, it looked like a pumpkin. So we're going with the pumpkin. You have to let me know what you think in the end. So I made up some of the clay molds from the air dry clay, and that's in the color stone like we did last week. When I applied the mold on with E6000, some of it stuck on the outside of the mold, and I couldn't wipe it off, so I decided to take a razor blade and I did get it, most of it all off. But when I did it, I scratched the paint off, and I loved the look of it. So I just kept going with it, and I found that it was easier. I took a damp paintbrush and wiped that on first, and it made the paint come off easier. But I liked the way that it looked, and I think I got off most of that glue. So here I am just hot gluing on some eucalyptus leaves and a piece of lace. You guys will have to tell me if you think that it looks like a pumpkin or if I just have pumpkin spice on my brain, even though it's not time yet. I took a piece of string and a long needle to push it through that small hole. I didn't want to make the hole any bigger, and that way I can hang it. And then this piece will be sealed with Rust-Oleum spray sealer. So for our next project, I found these 2 pieces of molding, and they were perfectly even. I know they look rough, but they cleaned up really well, and they even had the 45-degree angles already cut up there for me. So, but it just needed one more cut on the other side, and I could not find our, what is it called, like a right angle ruler. And my husband was driving at the time, so I didn't want to call him and ask him where it was. So I made my own. I just took my sewing rulers, taped them together, and it worked. So I cleaned them, sand them, and I think that they came out pretty good. Taking some of the Gorilla Glue, I make 2 little houses. So I've got the larger one that I'll be showing finished in a future video. I just did this short one this week because I'm going to do something a little bit different with that. All right, so here they are drying. I decided to go right down because there was such a big gap where they were glued together, and I brushed on some of the Gorilla Glue. I wiped off any that was on the top, and I also sanded it again. Here I'm cleaning them off, and I'm applying some white acrylic paint just very, very lightly. Next, I'll wipe them down with a clean cloth, tie some string around the top, and I found this little paper rose that I had in my stash, and I thought that that would be a nice embellishment. I want to hang this by my door. It says that it's so good to be home. And I made this little tag in Canva. Just going to punch a hole in it, tie it on, and then hot glue down the rose. My 3rd son is getting ready to go back to college, and he finishes and graduates in December. And this is always his favorite saying when he comes home. I'll have the sign all ready for his return in December. So this project is super easy. I cut out 2 3.5 by 3.5 squares out of that pine plank. And then I went on to Canva and I made up these graphics really quick. I printed them out on rice paper, and I'm applying Mod Podge onto the wooden block. All right, now I'm doing the same to the second block. So if you'd like more information on how to print your own graphics or any designs that you find online and use rice paper, I will link that video on at the end of this one. All right, so now I took them outside after they had a chance to dry. I didn't even bother cutting it off. I'm going through, I think the sander's on like a 1. Fine grit sandpaper going around the edges. This is going to distress the edges, and it's going to take off that extra paper around the sides. You could apply some spray sealer to seal them in, or even apply a coat of Mod Podge. I found another one of the weathered boards like we used last week. And I cut 2 of the pieces off about 10 inches long. And I decided to stencil both of them I really like the way that white paint looks on the weathered wood. Just simple, quick, easy. It would be a fun project for kids to do this summer. They could paint on them, use ink stamps, just about anything, and you can top it off and seal it in with your favorite sealer. You'll have to let me know if you would like some more scrapwood project ideas. I have a ton more, and I would love to share them with you. Or if you have any other ideas for video projects that you'd like to see, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Friends, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video and that these projects have inspired you to find some scrap wood and give it a fresh new purpose and makeover. Have a super blessed week, and I will see you next Sunday.